Tuesday, July 30th, 2024. I don't really understand why the media is now suddenly in this sort of cycle about, oh, name calling is bad. We shouldn't be doing that. Which, because that's what's coming from the Republican side, simply because the Democrats started calling the Republican candidates weird. Um, and I don't know if that was a planned tactic or if it just sort of happened organically and then people kept repeating it. But it isn't untrue. That's for sure. But when it's all of a sudden it's one sort of vague, blankety kind of descriptor, as opposed to what the Republicans have been doing, which is making very pointed, specific personal attacks on candidates and people, specifically Kamala Harris. Um, and suddenly they're like, oh, the discourse is so poor. It's like, um in playground terms, you started it. But I know that's not an excuse. I find it very strange, and I think that I think Whoopi said something really interesting this morning on The View, that they're going after a black woman in her 50s who's lived a life with a lot of great achievement. And if you think that she hasn't heard every single one of these things before, you're an idiot. Um, and, you know, try to dig a little deeper and get a little better material. They can't. They're not that bright. That's part of the problem. Um, and they just keep repeating their same old talking points. They don't know what else to do. And it is kind of hilarious. Amy Lissa Farrah Griffin kind of talked about this for a hot second, that they don't know what to do with themselves against Kamala Harris. There are a lot of things they could be going after, but her laughter and her race and her gender are pretty lame attempts. They can't help themselves but do identity politics because they can't run on a platform, because they don't really want to put out to the general public um, what they're trying to do for policy. They will distance themselves from Project 2025 because they're going to say that that's not their policy, and they don't agree with it, which is fine. They can say that all they want. And which is why I think we should stop talking about Project 2025 and point to his website, where his Agenda 47 is basically a copy and paste job out of Project 2025. That's their platform, is Agenda 47. So we need to stop with that whole idea about Project 2025. It's the same thing. Um, but that feeds into the whole idea of fear mongering, that we have to be afraid of Donald Trump. And the weird thing, that not moniker, is like, he's a joke, right? Forget about him. He's a joke. And then follow that up with, here's all the reasons that we need to be supporting Kamala Harris for president, and whoever that the vice president pick is going to be. I can't wait until this has a full ticket. Um, it and I haven't seen this anywhere yet, except on social media. But there was another like Zoom call for white dudes last night, and I did the gay one last week, and I was like, I'm a white dude. I want to see what they're talking about, and I gotta say, it was really moving. Um, Again, I couldn't stay for the whole thing. These things go on for a long time. People are really fired up, which is great. But there were almost 200,000 people on that call, and they raised over $4 million in a couple of hours. And it was wonderful to see the balance. And it was like, Mark Hamill was there, and Jeff Bridges was there, and what's his name? Sean Astin told these personal stories, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and then Governor Waltz from Minnesota, and Roy Cooper was on, who has said he doesn't want to be considered for the vice presidency anymore, which is good because he's too old. Pritzker from Illinois was on. Uh, Pete Buttigieg was on. It was great. Eric Swalwell went on. He told, yeah, it was a weird story that he got into, but it was really wonderfully measured between he's a felon. He's a convicted felon, and we all know what his policies do to harm people. It, balanced with these are all the things that and accomplishments that Kamala Harris has achieved throughout her career prior to being in the White House, in the Senate. I am reminded, I have been this week, and it's a good reminder of how brilliantly she would sort of tear apart anyone in that came to those Senate committees with bullshit. She made Brett Kavanaugh cry. And I forgot about that. I did forget about that kind of tenacity and that that prosecutorial nature that seems to just come right out of her innately. Um, and so it was. I mean, that was a great event. There was apparently at the same time there was another one for women. Um, there's another one I think on Wednesday for dads for Kamala or dads for Harris. Um, the White Dudes for Harris Twitter account, which is where this started as just an idea last week and turned into this huge event. And again, which was nice, they gave props to the Black women who started this sort of idea of getting together online. And I really do think that this is going to be a fundamental difference in how people campaign and how people fundraise. It is a genius way to get people together where people they don't have to leave their house. They don't have to do much. You'll sign on to a Zoom and you start listening to people, and it's very effective. I have to believe. People keep talking about all this canvassing and door to door and the ground game. It's just like I don't know what the ROI is on knocking on doors. I used to do environmental canvassing, and it's a lot of doors getting slammed in your faces and empty houses. So I don't know that the energy and the time and the resources that get spent into that what you get back out of it. But I do know that this sort of 21st century idea of like a town hall, um, where you get all sorts of surrogates advocating for you, talking to people of their own peers, white dudes talking to white dudes. And the first guy to talk was a Black guy talking about, basically silences complicity. And when you see racism and when you see things happening, here's options of how you can deal with that without sort of letting it go and not letting, because white dudes are getting a bad rap, and I get it, because it's white dudes who are the mass shooters. There's all sorts of shit going on. um, and he was talking about that sort of white men are getting sort of marginalized as sort of Christian nationalists, and not to let them speak for you, and it was the whole thing was about advocating for Kamala, why Trump is bad, but we all know why the reasons that Trump is bad. We know he's a felon. We know he's a racist. Um, and I don't think that's going to turn the needle, but I think that these discussions that people are having among their peers, Black women, gay people, dads, I think that's a great idea. Um, and uh, and sort of doing those in rotations with different speakers to talk about why this is important, why she's important, why and how we can get things done and what you can do. Mark Hamill was funny. He said every time someone asks him to take a selfie, he says, you have to go to iwillvote.com. And that's a great website. It's very easy to remember, iwillvote.com, and it helps you find out where your polling place is. And where to vote, when to vote, who's on the ballot, all that kind of stuff in wherever you live. So it's I'm rambling about that event, but I think that as a concept, I think um, that can be a really powerful tool moving forward. I love, and especially when you don't have a lot of time, it's a short campaign, and I she's raised a ridiculous amount of money from small donors. This is all individual donors. This isn't corporate or PAC money. So it's, I think, really impressive, and I think transformative in how people need to think about campaigning and elections going forward. Um, because I don't think this kind of trend is going away. It's very easy to just log on and listen for a couple hours. I had the Olympics on at the same time because men's diving. I mean, anyway, um, and then I don't usually talk about guests that are on the View, but this Fred Trump book, does seem a little late in the game, and I don't know that these personal stories about Trump really move the needle anymore. We know he's a racist. We know he doesn't really have much moral fiber. Um, the fact that he stole his nephew and niece's inheritances, it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. That's been reported, and Mary talked about it in the last cycle. So it's just like no one should be surprised by that. Um, and that doesn't mean that it's not bad to repeat it. But I do think that that sort of craven attitude about his own grand nephew, who is disabled, to just say, "Let him die" and move to Florida. That's the kind of thing I would expect Donald Trump to say behind someone's back. I was surprised to hear him that he would say it to his face. Um, and apparently, there was more than one instance because he did say it behind his back a few times to other aides and things that then revealed it to Fred later. That in those what he thought were productive conversations in the Oval Office, ended after he left with, aren't these people just going to die anyway? So, and I thought Joy made a really good point because his policies are just to let a lot of people die. We saw what he did with COVID. What makes you think he'd do anything different? So that part that dehumanizes him a little bit, I think, it isn't going to hurt. But the whole idea is, and Whoopi touched on this, is that the sort of up until Harris took over the top of the ticket, it has been about fear and what are they going to do, and what's going to happen if they get in power, and it has been about them. And I love this shift that it's sort of returned to a hope, an idea of prosperity, and what we can do. I know that sounds a lot like Obama's slogans, but um, it is true, and I think that that is energizing people more than anything. And we need to make people not afraid to vote. A lot of people I know were like, don't, and I wasn't going to put up a Biden sign. Um, that just seemed like a little bit of suicide out in the country. Um, but I sure did order a Harris bumper sticker. um, I they just don't have, there's no "Let's go Brandon" for Kamala. So that is it's sort of an opportunity to refresh and be like, hey, we can put our signs up too. But I don't think I'm going to dedicate, my whole. I don't have a boat, but I wouldn't dedicate a whole boat. Or I saw a truck the other day, just littered with these proud, deplorable, "fuck Joe Biden, let's go Brandon," the QAnon, um, just like and over again, all this bullshit, and it just covered in this black truck, this giant black truck, and it had spikes all over it around the wheel wells, and just like, it was just screaming, "I'm an insecure little shithead." And the whole time it was running when I parked behind it, went into the grocery store, came out after I finished grocery shopping. It was still running. No one was in it, but a dog with the window open. So I assume they had the air conditioning on, and like this giant gas guzzler, and these people are probably complaining about gas prices. Anyway, the levels of hypocrisy in that group are mind-boggling. I've rabbled on too much, but I think I am very excited about this sort of 21st century way of organizing, of of campaigning, and getting a message out that can deliver more than a soundbite. People have the capacity to hear more than one thing at a time. And so it doesn't have to be just, uh, one issue and one phrase that's repeated over and over again, but we can handle multiple ideas at the same time. He's bad. This is why she's good. It's not too difficult. I did also notice there must have been some sort of talking points that were sent out because the phrase that got used over and over again, which is a new one that I haven't heard before, is adjudicated rapist, which is just a nice, succinct way of saying that he was found liable of rape. So, adjudicated rapist. Also, it was hilarious when Bradley Whitford came on the call and said, "Oh, um, what did he say? The rainbow of beige," which was funny. Uh, anyway, that's a Tuesday. We're still waiting on the VP pick. I can't freaking wait.